Toronto folk singer is dead after she was attacked by a pair of coyotes.
What is the monkey doing? Tell me what the monkey...
He hit your face off!
We actually have a trainer in the water with one of our whales.
If I show weakness, if I retreat, I may be hurt, I may be killed.
Baby Azaria Chamberlain was taken by a dingo back in 1980.
Howdy doody, my little cuties. Welcome back to Man. It is the only true crime podcast on the internet where all the killers are real animals, whether it's biting, scratchings, maulings, or clawings. You better bet your sweet little bottom we are here to talk about it. As always, my name is James. I am your host. Joining me is my co-host, African Drum Circle. Good to see you, buddy. And welcome back to a new episode. First episode we've recorded in quite a little time. I'm back from my honeymoon in New Zealand. Thank you for everyone who sent those nice little messages through. New Zealand, boy, oh boy, what a place. If you're from New Zealand, shout out in the comments, if there are comments. And let me trade places with you, because I got to tell you what, that country, man, I vibe with it. I haven't done a lot of traveling in my life, but the travel that I've done, like New Zealand just kind of knocks everything else in the water. It's beautiful there. I gelled with the vibe so hard. The climate was like, it was freezing. Like it was -5 most days, which I guess for a lot of people isn't that cold, but for an Australian it is. But I loved it, man. I can't explain to you how much I loved it. We went from, we flew from Auckland, we flew into Auckland, had a bit of a layover there, and then we went to Christchurch, which was beautiful, really interesting architecture in Christchurch. We were like driving from the airport to our hotel, and we were like, Jesus, like all the houses are different here. Like there's an igloo house next to a house that's like a medieval English cottage next to a really brutalist, modern apartment building. But it didn't feel tacky. It all felt like it worked really well. It just seems like in Christchurch, I don't know if architecture is like a big thing there, but yeah, like I really liked that everything felt so unique and individual. And I guess that, like where I live, if you want to build a house, like you can't just build like a giant house that looks like a cactus or something. You have to fit into the guidelines of the council you're in. I'm thinking maybe Christchurch is maybe a little bit less rigid in their guidelines for people. But Christchurch was beautiful. We went to the Antarctic Center, the Antarctic Research Center, and learned a lot about some animals there. Learned a lot about the huskies that they have, or they do work with them. They obviously work with them less now because you don't really need huskies to be pulling sleds along, but they did back then. Learned a lot of the polar birds, like penguins obviously were great. And then like predators like the leopard seal, which I've long been like, hey, that's a scary animal. Elephant seals as well, quite scary. But yeah, beautiful. We went to they had a negative 18 degrees blizzard room that you would go in. It was like really fun. Loved Christchurch. Then we went to Lake Tekapo, which has got to be one of the most beautiful places on earth. And we stayed in this incredible accommodation my wife found. It was called the Silo, and it was basically a converted wheat silo into like a little apartment. It was beautiful, and there was a hot tub outside. There were deer. They weren't wild deer. They were farmed deer, but there were deer on the side. There was a frozen lake. Like I went for a walk through the forest because they have this brilliant little pine forest, and I walked through it and I discovered this like frozen lake, and I skimmed stones in the frozen lake, and then I slipped and fell, and for a good 2 minutes there, I thought I might have broken my arm on a rock, but I didn't. But no, like loved it. And then from Tekapo, we went to Queenstown, which is like the adventure capital of the South Island, or I guess of New Zealand in general, where they do a lot of skiing and snowboarding. We didn't do that, but we did some other things. They had bungee jumping. Again, didn't do that. I'm too much of a pussy. But we went, we did the luge. We went on a gondola. Did a bunch of escape rooms. We met some really cool people who have escape rooms. It really kind of made me think, hey, is my ultimate dream here to run escape rooms, to like open up an escape room business? Because, hey, I really liked it. And the people who were running them did not seem that much more intelligent than me. It made me think I could do it. because I was like, to be honest, I was like, if they can do it, I can do it for sure. So no, really, really great trip. Maybe I'll save the details for a Patreon thing. I'll do like a recording of my trip. I actually wrote a diary. Maybe I'll read my diary on the Patreon. That's actually a good idea. But for now, let's get back to our regularly scheduled programming. We're talking animals today. Specifically, we're talking about military animals. We're talking about all those animals that have helped us wage war on each other. That's right. Some really cool uses of animals and some really sad and horrific uses of animals as well that we're going to talk about today. We think of war as this thing that only involves us, but it really involves everything on the planet, particularly when you get up to the nuclear scale of war, which is where we could be. I just recorded something for the Patreon to warm myself back up because I kind of jumped into this a bit cold. If I sound like I'm sick, by the way, I'm not. I'm feeling great, but I don't know what it is. I think it might be our buildings in Australia. It is like it's probably about 15 degrees Celsius right now in Australia. That's and it's winter here. That's fine. I'm colder right now than I was in the entire 2 weeks I was in New Zealand. And in New Zealand, the average temperature would have been around 0 degrees for where we were. There was ice on the road. It was freezing. It was literally freezing, but it wasn't cold. All the buildings were built for cold. My apartment building is absolutely frigid. There is like frost on the windows, and it's midday when I'm recording this. It is absolutely so cold. So I sound like I've got the sniffles. I don't. I'm not sick. It's just I'm genuinely, my teeth are chattering. I hate it. So yeah, try to warm myself up before we got into this. But so bear with me. It might take me a moment to get back to my usual self. And if you hate my usual self, then I'm sorry. You've only got maybe a few more minutes until he comes back. But for now, you got this guy, way more relaxed, way more chill. The looming threat of having to go back to my job tomorrow is hanging over my head. But until then, we're going to sort of chill out. And we're going to talk about some military animals. Let's get into that. Take your seats, grab a drink, hot cocoa if you have one. If you have one, can you make me one? And let's talk about military animals. So, when we think about warfare throughout all of history, we tend to think of it as a human endeavor. And in a lot of ways it is, but, in a lot of ways it's not. For as long as we've been fighting each other, we've also been dragging our friends in the animal kingdom along with us into our mess. There have been animals throughout history that have been warriors. We've used them as weapons, as medics, as messengers, or as mascots. And they've stormed beaches, and they've dodged bullets, and they've sniffed out bombs. And in some places, they have actually sacrificed themselves for us. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into the strange, surprising, and oftentimes a little bit heartbreaking world of military animals. So let's start with the obvious thing about warfare, which is logistics. It's fucking difficult organizing a war. You would be surprised by that based on how quickly a lot of our leaders are willing to jump into that, but I guess they're not the ones who have to do all the planning and logistics. Logistics are, for warfare, I would imagine quite complex. We're talking about moving troops, supplies, and equipment across very difficult terrain, and that's always been like a challenge in warfare. It's probably one of the more difficult aspects. If you're not good at organization, maybe you shouldn't be planning a war. Now, of the animals that have helped us achieve, moving people and things around the battlefield, horses are probably like our most iconic animal allies. They've pulled chariots in ancient Mesopotamia and Rome. They charged with the cavalry across medieval Europe and Asia, and they've remained vital even into the 20th century. Actually, during World War I, over 8 million horses were used, although they were mostly used for transport. They carried supplies, ammunition, and wounded soldiers, often in terrible, muddy conditions. And despite the grim reality of trench warfare, horses remained critical for mobility, especially in areas where modern vehicles couldn't go. Now, obviously there were horses, but there were also mules, donkeys, and oxen that were heavily relied upon in war, particularly in mountainous or rugged terrain. For instance, mules provided more resilient. They proved more resilient than horses when it came to enduring long marches, carrying heavy loads, and surviving on quite sparse rations. These animals played key roles in the Italian campaign during World War II, and they were actually even parachuted into some areas during the conflict. Now, obviously, we've got these smaller animals, but there are some really big animals that were put into war as well. Elephants. Elephants were used in warfare, and actually, a good way to think of elephants is as the tanks of the ancient world. So elephants were used in battle by Indian, Persian, and Carthaginian armies. How do I say it? Carthaginian. I think it's Carthaginian armies. And the elephants weren't just for show either. Their huge size made them terrifying to opposing forces, especially untrained infantry. They could trample enemies, they could break through formations, and they could carry towers of archers or javelin throwers on their backs. I think elephants, maybe it's the first psyop of the world too. The psychological torture of seeing a fucking elephant in the ranks of your enemies. I don't think that can be understated. That would be pretty damn terrifying. Now, we also had camels. Camels, they were the go-to for desert warfare. Their endurance and ability to travel long distances without water made them ideal in places like North Africa and the Middle East. In fact, during both world wars, camel-mounted troops operated in desert campaigns, including the famous Long-Range Desert Group. I want to give an example of a specific animal that was used for the logistics and transportation services during wars. There was a Mongolian mare in the Korean War named Sergeant Reckless, which is a fucking sick name. And I think it should go in the list of potential man-eaters band names. Sergeant Reckless. I really like that. So Sergeant Reckless, well, he exemplified extraordinary equine services. Oh, sorry, it's a mare. She carried ammunition and later when she was wounded on her back, often navigating under fire. Sergeant Reckless not only made hundreds of solo trips, but was eventually promoted to Staff Sergeant Reckless, which is a rare honor for an animal, of course. Staff Sergeant Reckless, not as good a band name, but you get more salutes. Now, obviously, transportation and logistics wasn't the only part of warfare. There was espionage, there was spying, and there was messaging as well. And, for the majority of time, communication wasn't as high-tech as this. There were no podcasts, okay? Certainly no. There wasn't even radio. In an age before radio, one of the most reliable ways to get a message across a battlefield or enemy lines was to strap it to an animal and just hope that it would make it. Homing pigeons is the one that I thought of first, also known as war pigeons. These were the unsung heroes of both of the world wars. These animals could fly through gunfire, navigate long distances, and would deliver crucial intelligence that could save lives. One of the most famous examples was a pigeon named Cher Ami, which was used by the U.S. Army Signal Corps in World War I. In 1918, she delivered a message that saved nearly 200 men from friendly fire, despite being shot through the breast, blinded in one eye, and losing a leg. Oh my God. Another pigeon named Commando flew over 90 missions into occupied France during World War II. This pigeon's messages helped the Allies stay ahead of Nazi troop movements, and he received the prestigious Dickin Medal, which is the animal equivalent to the Victoria Cross. Cats and dogs were also sometimes used to carry messages, particularly in the trenches of World War I. Although they were less reliable than pigeons and could maneuver around less easily, they did have the advantage of being able to navigate through tight spaces and rubble. Of course, it doesn't stop just there. During the Cold War, there were lots of examples of the CIA and the KGB using animals as spies, essentially. In fact, there were rumors of the CIA using cats as listening devices. You might have heard this. Project Acoustic Kitty was one such bizarre experiment. Do you want to know what Acoustic Kitty was? It sounds pretty much to what the name suggests it is. It was surgically implanting microphones and transmitters into cats and then releasing them near enemy embassies. Did this project fail? Unsurprisingly, yes, it did. Partly because cats aren't really good at taking orders, as my cat who attacked me this morning in my own bed is a great example of. I'm not going to talk about her because I'm quite annoyed actually right now. Another example was Sergeant Stubby, another animal with a rank in the army. Sergeant Stubby was a stray bull terrier who served with the US 102nd Infantry during the World War I. He began as a mascot, but became indispensable as a messenger, a sentry, and as a morale booster. He participated in 17 battles. He warned soldiers of gas attacks, and he even captured a German soldier, earning promotion to sergeant and 2 Purple Hearts. My gosh. Now, obviously, it's not just espionage. Letters and messages and communiques are all well and good, but sometimes you actually got to bite a bitch. And that's where we come in with these animals, the attack and defense animals. These animals weren't just helpers, they were weapons. And the idea of turning animals into instruments of destruction has fascinated and horrified military planners for centuries. Let's start with dogs, okay? In ancient Rome, war dogs were armored and sent into battle to bite and maul enemy soldiers. The Molossus breed, an ancestor of today's Mastiff, was a particular favorite. These animals were sometimes fitted with spiked collars or even flaming barrels to create chaos. In World War II, the Soviets trained dogs to carry explosives and run under German tanks. These so-called anti-tank dogs were meant to detonate on contact. In theory, it was an innovative solution. In practice, it was tragically flawed. The dogs had been trained using stationary Soviet tanks, so when released on the battlefield, they often just ran back to friendly vehicles, sometimes with deadly consequences. Beyond the tactical failures, the program raised some serious ethical questions about animal cruelty, which I think is fair, because essentially you are training dogs to become suicide bombers. And I think that the bomb sniffing dogs at the airport is like the karmic payback to us doing that to them. Then I had a dog at the airport. Just a little side story. Jump on my luggage in Auckland, and I had to be pulled into another room. But apparently it was all good. I didn't have anything exciting in my suitcase. The dog, I think, just smelled me. So other than dogs, we also use bats in warfare. These bats were weaponized. The US Army experimented with bat bombs during World War II. The plan was to strap tiny incendiary devices to the bats, drop them over Japanese cities at dawn, and let them roost in the wooden eaves of buildings. Their timed explosives would then ignite and cause widespread fires. This is actually not that dumb of a plan. Like, the interesting use of using like a nocturnal animal that would go in the day and roost inside the buildings, and then the timers would go off. That's pretty smart. And the test showed that the method did have potential, but the project was ultimately shelved in favor of the atomic bomb. That's right. Yes, if you had to choose between the Oppenheimer atomic bomb or a bunch of tiny bats with incendiary devices, I would choose the bats. It's honestly a much more fun method of explosion, and it's also a funner movie. We need to do that. I would love to watch the, a Quentin Tarantino, Inglourious Bastard style World War II movie where they don't make the atom bomb and they use weaponized bats instead. I think that'd be really cool. We even used some aquatic animals. Dolphins and sea lions were also enlisted. In the 1960s, the US Navy began training marine mammals for underwater reconnaissance, for mine detection, and for diver interception. Dolphins' sonar-like abilities and sea lions' vision and agility made them ideal for identifying submerged threats. These animals were actually deployed during the Vietnam War, the Gulf War, and even in the 2000s. They could tag enemy divers with tracking devices or retrieve equipment from the ocean floor. Russia also developed marine mammal programs, including training beluga whales, one of which was named Vladimir. It's a H with a Vladimir after it. And this animal made headlines in 2019 after appearing in Norway wearing a harness marked Equipment St. Petersburg. Whether Vladimir was a runaway spy or just a friendly escapee is still up for debate. Now, some animals were sent to do damage, but some were actually trained to save lives. We're going to talk about some rescue and medical support animals now. Mercy dogs, also known as casualty dogs, were trained to find wounded soldiers on the battlefield. They were used heavily in World War I, and these dogs carried medical supplies that would lie beside injured troops to comfort them until help arrived. or they would return to their handler with a piece of uniform to signal a find. Some were even trained to drag men to safety. A famous example of this was a German shepherd named Felix of Leuonow, who reportedly helped rescue over 50 soldiers in World War I. These dogs often worked at night, under fire, and they made decisions in chaotic conditions. Their intelligence and loyalty made them ideal for such emotionally intense roles. The use of dogs in search and rescue continues to this day. After natural disasters, dogs are often brought in first to dogs are often the first sent into collapsed buildings to sniff out survivors from rubble. I know that they did that in where was it that I was looking? I can't even remember. I think it was like an earthquake in Christchurch. They did that. They brought dogs in. Yeah. We also have, this one's pretty scary too, paratrooper pups and military medals. So some military animals have gone above and beyond, and they've been honored for it. So there was a collie/German shepherd mix named Bing, who parachuted into Normandy with British troops during the D-Day invasion. Bing braved gunfire and helped locate enemy positions and was eventually awarded the Dickin Medal, which, as we discussed earlier, was the highest medal an animal could get. There was also Trio, which was a black Labrador, who served with the British Army in Afghanistan. Trio detected multiple roadside bombs, saving countless lives. He was later awarded the Dickens Medal, which again is often referred to as the Animal Victoria Cross. And finally, there was Luca, a US Marine Corps dog serving in over 400 missions in Iraq and Afghanistan. Luca unfortunately lost a leg in an IED explosion, and she was retired with full honors and a Dickin Medal in 2016. Now, not all military animals were trained killers, bomb-sniffing savants. Some of them were just there, but that was actually more than enough for them. Mascots have been part of military life for centuries. Regiments have kept goats, bears, kangaroos, cats, and more as unofficial companions. These animals help boost morale, they bring comfort, and they remind troops of home. The Canadian Army famously had a black bear cub named Winnipeg, or Winnie, which was their mascot during World War I. That bear eventually ended up in London Zoo, where she inspired A.A. Milne's Winnie the Pooh. We've talked about her on the show before. Even today, military units might unofficially adopt local strays while deployed. These animals often become beloved members of the team, sharing rations, sleeping in tents, and attending roll call. So, to summarize what we've talked about, animals have been serving in nearly every major conflict in recorded human history. Some have carried messengers, some have pulled wagons, some have carried bombs, some have saved lives, and some have lost their own. Their roles have evolved with technology, but, the bond between soldiers and animals, whether it's forged in the trenches or on the battlefield or aboard a Navy ship, this bond remains one of the most enduring partnerships in the history of war, which is a nice little thought. And while they don't always sign up for the service, in fact, they never sign up for the service because they don't have hands and they can't hold a pencil, many did serve with honor. These are often quiet heroes, oftentimes with no rank, always without a voice unless they're some kind of weird parrot, and often no recognition, except for today. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about something else. This is a little bit worse. We're going to go back into a little bit more detail with some of the things we've already talked about. But these are animals that were experimented on, military experiments on animals. So while many animals did serve with courage and effectiveness on the battlefield, not every military experiment was a success. In fact, some of them were just straight up fucked up. And as a result of desperation or ambition or just too much free time in the War Office, military history is just littered with plans of animals that never quite worked. So let's look at some of the strangest and most famously failed animal experiments in military history. Some of these we've talked about. So number one is the bat bomb. So I mentioned this before. It does sound like something from a cartoon, but in the 1940s, the US military began developing secret weapons involving bats strapped with miniature incendiary device. This idea was proposed by a Pennsylvania dentist named Lethal S. Adams, and it actually was supported by the White House. The plan was to release thousands of bats over Japanese cities. These bats would roost in buildings, and after a timed delay, the bombs would ignite, starting fires all over urban areas built largely of wood and paper. Tests showed that the concept would work. In fact, at one point during a trial in New Mexico, a group of bats escaped and accidentally burnt down part of the test facility. Despite an initial success, however, the program was ultimately shelved in 1944 in favor of the atomic bomb. This program was officially named Project X-Ray, which is a pretty great name and a great name for the movie that we're going to write. And it cost about $2 million, which is a hefty price tag for something that never made it past testing. But when you compare it to what the Manhattan Project cost, for example, which is something in the where I think it was like $6 billion or something, $6 trillion, something stupid, something absolutely insane. Another absolutely insane thing that we touched briefly on earlier was the anti-tank dogs. I think this deserves another mention here because while the program was technically deployed, it was also one of the most catastrophic military failures in animal history. The Soviet army trained dogs to carry explosives and run underneath enemy tanks, where the charges would detonate, killing the dog and also crippling the tank. But there was a critical flaw. The dogs were trained using static Soviet tanks. So when they were released into the battle films, many of them ran towards Soviet tanks instead of the German ones. Worse still, the loud noises and chaos often caused the dogs to panic and flee, sometimes triggering explosions near friendly troops. The program was quickly abandoned, and though exact casualty numbers are unclear, the results were deemed ineffective and tragic. The Soviet Union famously sheepish about releasing accurate casualty numbers in anything. In fact, I'm pretty sure if you ever watched Chernobyl, the miniseries Chernobyl, you'll know that the US estimates that 10,000 people were killed in Chernobyl over the course of the whole disaster, whereas the Russian or the Soviets only ever officially acknowledged 6 people had died. And I think that kind of attitude would probably ring true here. So we'll probably never know how many people were killed by Project Anti-Tank Dog. Project Pigeon, though, this was a little bit more successful potentially. In the same era as the Soviet tank dogs, American behavioralist B.F. Skinner convinced the military to fund a project in which pigeons would be trained to guide bombs to their target. The plan involved putting trained pigeons inside the nose cone of a bomb where they would peck at a screen showing the target area. Their pecking would control the bomb's steering fins, adjusting its course mid-air. Remarkably, Skinner's pigeons were actually very accurate, but the military brass just couldn't get past the optics of pigeon-guided missiles, and the project was shelved in 1944. Ironically, the basic principle, guiding weapons via a live feedback, was years ahead of its time when it would become the basis of the first early smart bomb technology. Now, no list of famous failed animal espionages would be complete without talking about Acoustic Kitty, which we did talk about a little bit before, but let's get into a bit more detail. Acoustic Kitty was a CIA effort to turn a cat into a mobile listening device during the Cold War. I'm actually watching The Americans on Disney Plus right now, and it's a Cold War espionage thing. Very cool. I would love to see if a remote activated mobile listening cat appears in this series. I doubt it for some reason. The idea was to surgically implant a microphone, a radio transmitter, and a battery into a cat, allowing it to eavesdrop on Soviet conversations. The cat would be trained to sit near targets and record conversations remotely. After years of development and an alleged cost of over $20 million, the first test failed almost instantly. The cat was released near a park bench occupied by 2 suspected agents and was immediately hit by a taxi. And that was the end of Project Acoustic Kitty. The project was deemed impractical and, perhaps more importantly, a complete misunderstanding of how cats behave. Finally, kamikaze dolphins. Now, these are kind of more of a rumor, but both the US and the Soviets have trained marine mammals, like we mentioned before, particularly dolphins, to detect mines, to identify enemy divers, and to retrieve objects. But rumors have swirled for decades about more lethal ambitions. According to some reports, there were attempts, especially during the Cold War, to train dolphins to carry explosives or even deliver fatal injections to enemy swimmers. The Soviet program in particular was said to be developing, quote, kamikaze dolphins that would swim towards enemy ships with explosive devices strapped to their back. However, there is little hard evidence that these attack dolphins were ever actually deployed. Most sources suggest the animals were primarily used for detection and retrieval. The US Navy has consistently denied training dolphins to harm humans, but hey, that hasn't stopped the stories, and hey, the US Navy lies a lot. The whole US government lies a lot. Epstein list. Okay, so these failed experiments offer a strange window into the military's innovation. Whether they were successes or failures, you cannot deny that they are at least impressive engineering ideas that people have had. Now, while some of these ideas were grounded in science, like Skinner's pigeons, others were really sort of teetering on the edge of science fiction. But what they all have in common is this: when war, particularly World War, puts pressure on people to win by any means necessary, nothing is off limits, even animals. Fortunately, most of these ideas never made it past the planning stages, and only casualties were a few unfortunate lab rats and maybe a very confused cat and maybe some Soviets who got blown up in a tank when a dog ran under it. Yeah. So that's my little story today on animals in warfare, military animals, something I've been interested in quite a while. They use animals a lot. Still, people use animals as suicide bombs. Like they'll strap a bomb to a dog and the dog will run into a place and boom, there you go. Which is very sad because who isn't keen to see a dog every now and again? Okay, let's leave it there. We're going to take a break and we'll be back with the rest of the episode momentarily. Ooh, we wacky backy tobacky. Guys, I've been missing this. It's been a long time since we recorded an episode, so there's some interesting news to cover in one of my favorite segments. It's the Scratch of the Day. So this first story, it's only tangentially related to animals. Initially, this is from about a week ago. Initially, a little girl, an 8-year-old girl, was attacked, and authorities believed it was an animal based on the injuries. This isn't the first time this has happened. We've had several times instances where people have been attacked, and their injuries are so brutal that authorities go, damn, she must have been mauled by a bear or a mountain lion. Unfortunately, this small Canadian town is reeling because it has been revealed that a teenage boy was responsible for this attack on an 8-year-old girl that police initially thought was from an animal. So let's read about that. It's not animal related, but let's read it because it was initially pinned on an animal. A small rural community in Canada is reeling after police said the horrific attack of an 8-year-old girl was not caused by an animal, as they had suspected, but allegedly by a teenage boy who they have now charged with attempted murder. The residents of Quadville, a town of only a few hundred people in South Ontario, are questioning local law enforcement's handling of the case after officials initially told them to keep their children indoors to protect them against a possible offending animal. The girl was first reported missing on the 23rd of June, with Ontario Provincial Police saying she was last seen around 6 p.m. at a local grocery store wearing a t-shirt and shorts. She was found with serious injuries later that night around 12:30 a.m. in a clearing in a wooded area of the community and taken to a children's hospital in nearby Ottawa. On the 25th of June, police investigators announced that they had suspected she had been hurt in an animal attack, but that further testing was needed. Last week, they had said, in fact, they had arrested and charged a 17-year-old boy with sexual assault with a weapon and attempted murder. As a minor, he cannot be named under the Youth Criminal Justice Act. The OPP's Bill Dickinson said officers at first believed the girl was attacked by an animal due to the nature of her injuries, but that he could not comment on them in detail. Quote, while we proceeded, I fucked that up because I was thinking about doing a Canadian accent, but it doesn't feel appropriate, so I'm just going to do like a standard sort of like American accent. While we proceeded looking at this as a suspected animal attack, the investigation also continued to look at other aspects, Dixon said. You can't go into an investigation like this with tunnel vision. He added that police could not comment on what led them to arrest the teenager as the case is before the courts. The allegations have rocked the one intersection community, whose close-knit nature is illustrated by the fact that the victim's family and suspect's family know each other, Dixon said. After the attack, police held a town hall on the 12th of July to address swirling questions, including why it took them until 9 p.m. on the day the girl went missing to begin searching. It does take time to get some of the specialized services here, Derek Needham, acting chief superintendent with the OPP, told residents, according to the CBC, though a resident responded, "As a parent, that's not good enough. You guys should be where they are when the call was put out." The local Pentecostal church has led a fundraiser for the family, with the pastor, Joseph Fiorentino, stating that the girl is, quote, showing signs of improvement, adding, her recovery is hopeful, but the road will be long. So that is another story of a horrible attack from a human being pinned on an animal, and that does happen quite a lot. In fact, if you'll remember back to the end of 2023, there was a story where some teenagers, I think, stole a car, and they tried to, I think they tried to like do like a insurance job or something like that, where they like tore up the seats and they fucked up the car, and they tried to pin it on a bear, and then they even like had footage of one of them in a bear costume doing it. It was a very bizarre story. I'm not sure if I'm remembering all of that correctly, but if you go back, I'm sure you'll find that. We have another story, this time in Pakistan. Pakistan is cracking down on illegal lion ownership after escaped pets, more women and 2 kids. Pakistani authorities say that they have confiscated 11 lions kept illegally as pets in Punjab province following a public outcry after an escaped pet lion mauled a woman and 2 children on a street in Lahore. The woman suffered scratches and bruises in the attack last week, while the 2 children aged 5 and 7 were hospitalized with non-life-threatening injuries. The owner of the lion was arrested. Experts say it is a mammoth task to stifle exotic big cat ownership in Pakistan, which has proliferated over the last decade thanks in part to social media. Punjab's Wildlife and Parks Department says there are 584 lions and tigers in homes and breeding farms across the province. Hira Jalil, visiting assistant professor at the United States Center for Animal Law Studies, has worked on animal-related legal issues in Pakistan. Ms. Jalil said illegal wildlife ownership was prolific. Quote, I have friends who would tell me how they would be walking their dogs on their street and see lions looking out from people's windows in the back seats of cars, see people walking their lions like they are dogs, she said. She said many of the big cats were kept in unsavory conditions. Quote, it obviously leads to really poor welfare for the animals, especially when they're being kept in people's backyards, being declawed, perpetually sedated, and being used as photo opportunities, she said. The process of declawing, amputating the last digit bone in the cubs, is associated with increased biting and aggression, but is often undertaken to make the pets more harmless. Even so, because of their large size, lions are sometimes drugged to keep them placid. Some say keeping exotic animals as pets as a trend is fueled by social media, but it does have historic roots. A tiger is the election symbol for one of the 3 major political parties in Pakistan, the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, whose founder, Nawaz Sharif, has served as Pakistan's prime minister for 3 terms, and the animals are often seen at political rallies. Quote, people were bringing tigers and lions to political rallies, and it became a way of showing solidarity with the ruling party or your political affiliation, Ms. Jalil said. Big cats have also become social media fodder in recent decades, with owners flaunting the pets as a symbol of luxury and wealth. Some are used as gifts for wedding photos, and cubs are often given as gifts. In March 2022, a video showing a TikTok celebrity being swiped by a colleague's pet lion, which had to be restrained, went viral. WWF Pakistan Senior Director of Conservation Rob Nawaz said that influencers played an important role in the conversation around big cat ownership in Pakistan. Quote, that's half the battle, to make the public understand what goes on in the background, how the animals are kept, he said. If the public is behind us or behind the department, it will be very easy to stop. Quote, because people will not be buying those animals if they realize the suffering they go through and the danger they pose to the public at large. In January, a Pakistani YouTuber with 5 million subscribers was ordered to create 12 animal welfare videos as punishment for illegally owning a lion cub. It was a novel way of actually punishing him, and I think perhaps it did some good work, Mr. Nawaz says. The story goes on for a little bit about some legal loopholes that people go through, but essentially that's the story there, is that exotic pet ownership in Pakistan was a bigger problem than I ever thought it was. It's pretty crazy. There's video. There's video. Let's watch this. Hopefully it works. All right, I'm going to put the microphone down so you can hear. Oh, wow. Okay, so there's no audio, so let me... Oh, my God. Let me talk you through this. It's like an alleyway in Pakistan. And essentially this lion it's like a maneless lion or a lioness climbs over this big concrete wall and chases these two children down the alley. The woman turns around, it jumps on her, tackles her to the ground, it jumps off, it attacks one of the kids, it attacks another man, it looks like, and then across the road there's like someone there's a person on a bike with a big light that scares them off, and then everyone comes to help. That's a fucking wild story there. Okay. Last story, it does also involve a lion. This is a follow-up part from the story last episode. I was talking about how in Queensland a zoo had a lion attack in it. There's some updates on that now. So Darling Downs Zoo lion attack victim was named as New South Wales schoolteacher Joanne Cabin. I believe she had a relationship with the owners. I think she was a daughter-in-law or something like that. Let's see. The woman who lost her arm after being mauled by a lioness at a Queensland zoo on Sunday has been identified as Joanne Cabin, a school teacher from Forbes in New South Wales. Oh, I've been to Forbes. Forbes is beautiful. I love Forbes. Miss Cabin was visiting her sister, Darling Downs Zoo owner Stephanie Robinson, during a regular school holiday trip when she was attacked. She remains in a stable condition in the Princess Alexandra Hospital in Brisbane, where she has undergone surgery for her injuries. According to her family, Miss Cabin has been visiting the zoo for 20 years and often took photographs of the animals during her visits, turning the images into calendars at Christmas. In a statement, Red Bend Catholic School, Miss Cabin's employer said the school's thoughts and prayers were with her and her family. Joe Cabin is a much-loved member not only of our Red Bend College community, but also our broader Forbes and Parks communities. The statement read, Forbes and Parks are two towns that are very close to each other, and both are beautiful. Parks, I can't remember if it's Forbes or Parks. One of them has this weird obsession with Elvis Presley. They have like an Elvis Presley festival every year. And they also have like a UFO obsession as well. Like people go out there to look for UFOs. I can't remember if it's Forbes or Parks. I think it might be Parks. The family has asked for full privacy and we will respect that request. Zoo owner Steve Robinson said his wife and a carnivore keeper had just finished cleaning out the lion enclosure at about 8:30 a.m. on Sunday when they heard a scream and discovered a lioness had bitten Miss Cabin's arm, effectively amputating the limb. Mr. Robinson said Miss Cabin had been standing alone near the holding pen where several lionesses were being held at the time. He said another keeper was nearby when the incident occurred, who jumped into action a split second to save his sister-in-law's wife. Not wife, I meant to say. She was the first responder in terms of first aid to the incident, Mr. Robinson said. She actually took my wife's leather belt off and applied a tourniquet. The paramedics locally were here very, very quickly, and the Life Flight helicopter arrived and took her to a hospital in Brisbane. Mr. Robinson said there was no CCTV coverage of the holding enclosure as the area was not accessible to the public. Workplace Health and Safety Queensland is still investigating the attack. So there's our scratch of the day. 2 stories and a follow-up pup. We're going to take another quick little interstitial break and we'll get back with a final game to wrap our episode up. All right, I'm going to wrap this thing up nice and tidy, guys. We're going to play a game with some AI. We've been doing this for a few weeks. It's quite fun. I've asked to play the animal guessing game with ChatGPT again, but this time it's only going to be a deadly animal. I'm going to ask the yes or no questions, and they are going to tell me if I'm correct or not. So, first question, carnivore, question mark. Is it a carnivore? is my first question. Yes, it is a carnivore. Very good. Is it a big cat? I'll be very impressed if I get this really quickly. Yes, it is a big cat. Okay, is it native to Asia? Yes, it's native to Asia. Okay, so that narrows it down. It's either a leopard or a tiger, because lions, I don't think, are native to Asia anymore because they're extinct. Could it be anything else? Does it have stripes? Let's go with that. I don't want to just guess straight away leopard. Okay, it's definitely a tiger, right? Yes, it's a tiger. There you go. Let's do another one. How about I think of the animal? How about I think of the animal? Okay, so you guys know I'm thinking of, I'm going to think of a, what should we go with? Let's go hippopotamus. Yes. Okay. Question 1, it's asked me, is it a mammal? Yes, it is. Is it a carnivore? No, it's not. Hippopotamuses are herbivores. Is it larger than a human? By golly, it is. Yes, it is. Is it... Oh, it's asked me 2 questions. Oh, it's because it's ChatGPT's asking me to give a... Okay, well, we'll go with this one. Is it primarily land dwelling? Now, that's an interesting question. Is it primarily land dwelling? Like, it's not a shark. It doesn't live in the water, but it spends most of its time in the water. I'm going to say no. Let's see if it tricks it. No. Is it a type of whale? No. Yeah. Does it live in fresh water, like rivers or lakes, rather than the ocean? Yes. Does it have a rough, armored body or shell? It's got a thick skin, but I wouldn't call it armor or shell. No. Does it have teeth that are noticeably large or used for hunting? Yeah, it's got huge old tusks. Is it known to be dangerous to humans because of its aggressive behavior or attacks? Yes, it is. What about question 10? Does it spend a lot of time lurking underwater to ambush prey? Not really. No, it just goes underwater. Not lurking underwater, but large, fresh, dangerous, big teeth mammal, but not a carnivore. Is it herbivore or omnivore? Herbivore. Is it a hippopotamus? Yes, you are correct. Well done. Well done, Mr. Robot. Let's do another one. You think of one this time. Okay, let's do one more. Okay, first question. Is it a land animal? Yes, it is. Is it a mammal? Yes, it is a mammal. Big cat? Question mark. No, it's not a big cat. Ooh, canine. No, it's not a canine either. So that makes me think it's either maybe it's a bear. Let's go. Is it a carnivore? I didn't ask that yet. Yes, it is a carnivore. Okay, so it's going to make me think it's a bear. Different colors, maybe. Does it have different colors? It does have different colors or coat patterns. Larger than a human? Larger than a human man? No, it's not larger than a human. Interesting. Maybe it's something smaller like a wolverine or a badger or a weasel or something. Sharp teeth. Let's ask that. Yes, it has sharp teeth. So what is it? It's a land animal, mammal, not a big cat, not a canine. Yes, it's a carnivore. Different colors. Cold climate, maybe? No, it does not live in a cold climate. Okay, interesting. So that takes away my guess of like a wolverine. Maybe it's some kind of like badger or something. I don't know. I'm actually kind of stumped here. Let's see if it's from Africa. No, it's not native to Africa. Let's go Asia. Yes, it's native to Asia. Okay, so it's a small predator from Asia. That's a mammal. And it's not a big cat. It's not a canine. It's not a bear, is it? It is a bear. Okay, so but it's smaller than a human. Okay, so it can't be would you say a black bear is smaller than maybe black bear? I don't know if I can call a black bear smaller than a human. No, it's not a black bear. What other animals? What other bears? Like a sun bear? Yes, it's a sun bear, the smallest and one of the deadliest bears in Asia. Very, very good, me. All right, gang, I think we're going to call it a day now. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to hear about my exploits in New Zealand, head over to the Patreon and I'll record that and put that there as well. I also did the Metazua before I headed off as well, and I think I've got one I can do for today as well. yeah, and thank you for all your kind messages and words. I haven't replied yet. I really should. A listener sent a really great email through, which is very lovely, and then also sent an Instagram through. I was being very conscious to not do any work-related stuff, including the podcast, while I was overseas. So if you did send a message in the holidays, I apologize if I didn't reply straight away. I was just being very active in enjoying the time that me and my wife were spending together. And it was a lovely time. It really was. I came out of it feeling very happy, but also very ready to get back to work. I have a lot going on in my work life with my actual job with Hunter Drama, but also with my theatre company that I run, Knock and Run Theatre, and obviously the podcast, as well as some other little acting gigs that I have coming up as well. So very busy guy, but I always want to make sure the podcast is getting enough attention because I do love it and I love you guys. And yeah, I get not a weird little kick, but I get a kick out of hearing from you guys and seeing that you guys are listening to the show and everything. So as always, just want to remind you, we have all the social media stuff. Send me a message. I'm always looking to improve the show. Any suggestions you have, I'm very open to it. But yeah, that is going to do today's episode. I'll be back next episode with a story about parasites. So stay tuned for that. Until then, stay safe because as we've learned, it's a jungle out there. See you later, kids.